Like the reality is internet kind of collapsed from, lots of individual businesses to massive aggregators, right? You have Google as one aggregator, right? All the attention goes to Google, and then Google kind of auctions off this attention to highest bidders through the ads auctions. Or you have TikTok, Instagram, X model where there is kind of a ranking feed to engage you more and inject ads into your flow, right? Those are two pretty much capturing most of users' attention. Then even things like Amazon and DoorDash and Uber Eats, like all of them are still aggregators as well, doing a similar thing. So we kind of need to rebuild that, like that fundamental thing. So that's why I call it, we need a user-owned internet.
Welcome to the Edge Podcast. I'm DeFi Dad here with Nomadic from 4RC. Today's show spotlights NEAR protocol, a blockchain pioneering a user-owned internet and breaking new ground with AI-driven governance. In this episode, we explore NEAR's journey from its early days as NEAR.ai to becoming a leading Layer 1 blockchain. We dive into its latest advancements around chain abstraction and how they're developing an AI delegate, paving the way for organizations around the world to someday install AI CEOs or even AI presidents as more competent leaders. But before we do, just a quick word from our sponsors who make the Edge podcast possible. Introducing REDSTONE, the fastest growing oracle for DeFi. REDSTONE is the leading oracle for liquid staking and restaking assets, supporting over 60 chains with both the push and pull models. REDSTONE protects more than $3 billion of total value locked and is trusted by more than 100 clients, including the biggest protocols in DeFi, such as Pendle, Venus, EtherFi, and Athena. The unique modular design of REDSTONE makes their price feeds available cross-chain, including EVM, non-EVM, roll-up networks, and all types of app chains. REDSTONE aims to bring the industry forward by supporting upcoming Bitcoin staking tokens and continues to be the #1 oracle provider for liquid staking and restaking tokens. Soon the team will unveil the highly anticipated REDSTONE token to decentralize the protocol. Learn why Nomadic and I rely on REDSTONE for our favorite DeFi apps at REDSTONE.finance and join the REDSTONE expedition today. Power up your portfolio by borrowing, lending, and multiplying your favorite assets, made safe and easy by the industry-leading automation tools at SUMMER.FI. SUMMER.FI offers a curated DeFi experience to access the highest quality protocols and strategies. Discover new earn strategies for your portfolio in a user-friendly app designed to filter based on the tokens you hold, the networks you transact on, the protocols you trust, and the highest available yields. Learn more today at SUMMER.FI, the best place to borrow and earn in DeFi. Discover MERLIN Chain, the cutting-edge Bitcoin Layer 2, trusted with over $2 billion in total value locked. MERLIN revolutionizes Bitcoin by unlocking its true potential with native L1 assets, lightning-fast transactions, and ultra-low fees on an EVM-compatible network. Elevate your Bitcoin experience with MERLIN Chain today at merlinchain.io. All right, let's introduce Illia, the co-founder of NEAR and CEO of NEAR Foundation. Illia, welcome to the Edge Podcast. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me.
Before we started here, I just mentioned that NEAR was one of the earliest projects that I got interested in beyond the scope of an Ethereum or Bitcoin. And it's evolved a lot over the years. And so now we are closer, I think, than ever to what you describe as this user-owned internet. And hopefully today will be a nice breakdown of all of the innovations, that the tech behind NEAR that's going to enable this user-owned internet. So why don't we start out with just a little bit of background per usual. Again, NEAR is so well known, but for folks that are totally new to the space, how would you tell the highlights reel of NEAR and its founding story?
For sure, yeah. I can maybe start with founding story and then kind of really tell you where we are now and where we're going. So we originally started actually as an AI company. So my background is in machine learning and AI. I worked at Google Research and led a team working on question answering, machine translation. And so before Gemini, kind of if you asked questions on google.com and gotten short answers or highlighted answers, my team was contributing to that. And as part of that work, I developed a technology called transformers, which is what the T in ChatGPT stands for. So this is pretty much one of the most cited kind of AI papers of last 10 years and used across almost all of the modern AI innovations. Now, I developed it in Google Research with a team of colleagues, and I wanted to build it into a product, and I was not clear that Google would be able to launch it as a product, which, I mean, as we saw, it didn't really happen and up until they saw a competition from an external startup. And so we started NEAR.ai with my co-founder, Alex, really focused on how do we leverage transformer technology in 2017 to teach machines to program. Now, it was too early. We didn't have the, compute capabilities at the time. We didn't have enough data at the time. We were trying to be smarter. So we were trying to actually engage community of developers around the world to generate more training data for us. And so we had students around, Eastern Europe, China, kind of Southeast Asia, to do that. And we faced a challenge of how to pay these people, how to pay contributors around the world. From US sending money to all these countries is, weird capital controls, dollars don't travel, all kind of things. Some of them students don't have bank accounts. And so crypto actually was a very clear answer. It's like, hey, you need to pay people around the world. Well, crypto mission is to do that. But even in 2018, already when we looked around, we didn't actually find anything that would really kind of match our requirements as developers, right? Easy to build on, fast and cheap. Like the transaction fees, even back then, were already, in like tens of cents, and they were higher than what we were paying people per task, right? So it's kind of didn't really make sense to use that. And obviously, it was really weird system where to start using blockchain, you need to first buy some crypto. It's like if you go to job and they first tell you to buy stock of this company before you can get your first salary. And so so that's kind of where we focused on building out the blockchain. And so NEAR protocol was born. And so the focus was really how do we build something that is really easy to use, easy to build on, and truly scalable, scalable to billions of people. So my co-founder built sharded database before that's used by Fortune 500. I worked at Google where, everything scales to billions of users. And so for us, it was kind of very natural that the technology needs to be really able to satisfy kind of way larger demand than it was even now. And so we kind of formulated some set of basic principles, right? Easy to develop on, easy to use, scalability, kind of, low latency. And as we kind of, continued formulating our vision, we really formulated as kind of one step above that. And this comes also from kind of some of the personal experience, is that we want to give all people in the world ability to control their assets, data, and power of choice. And so these are very important. Each kind of piece is important. First of all, we're targeting all people, right? So it's really important for us to figure out that anyone, ideally even people who don't have access to internet right now, but, to start with, who do, are able to use this. So it should be extremely cheap, right, and free to start. It should be extremely easy. It should not have the complexity. It should not have, 0x addresses, buy crypto before using, etc. You should be able to own your assets. So I'm originally from Ukraine. I saw, my grandparents had savings account in USSR, which disappeared when USSR collapsed. And I saw, hyperinflation of coupon pretty much within 4 years. Bread costed 10, 100, 10,000, a million. I've seen all that myself. So I know what owning your own assets means. For data, it's actually fundamental. I think this is kind of the next resource. And right now we're spreading our data everywhere. You log into websites, you leave your information everywhere. And then there's data leaks. Like I know people who had struggled with personal identity being stolen because of these data leaks. And so it's really important that that data belongs to you and you give access and control, right? It's not kind of being like everywhere splattered around the internet. And finally, this power of choice is kind of even more fundamental. Right now, people spend a lot of time on TikTok, on Instagram. And the thing is, those platforms optimized for the generating profit for those companies. Yes, they kind of produce a good entertaining product, but they're not on your side. They're not giving you the choice. They're trying to make money of you. And so in a way, we're kind of in this like slowly boiling frog system where you don't even notice as like the content gets dumber, right? It's like the shelling point of that system is like everything is dumb and we're stuck in that, right? And like not because these companies are evil, I want to make sure. It's just like the incentive structure is like that. Like, and because we don't have a choice as people, we're not able to kind of control what the feed, what the content, what the information is going. And in turn, we don't have then a way to make decisions informed, right? And like we see this in elections, we see this in like more and more conflicts, like it's all kind of accelerating. So this is kind of the vision, right? It's very fundamental. And so in a way, to really achieve this vision, we need a new internet. We need something that is not mediated by these platforms that right now we use. Like the reality is internet kind of collapsed from, lots of individual businesses to massive aggregators, right? You have Google as one aggregator, right? All the attention goes to Google and then Google kind of auctions off this attention to highest bidders through the ads auctions. Or you have TikTok, Instagram, X model where there is kind of a ranking feed to engage you more and inject ads into your flow, right? Those are two pretty much capturing most of users' attention. Then even things like Amazon and DoorDash and Uber Eats, like all of them are still aggregators as well, doing similar thing. So we kind of need to rebuild that, like that fundamental thing. So that's why I call it, we need a user-owned internet, where you own assets, data, power of choice. You decide what you kind of consume, what you see, what you engage with, and you can, if you want, you can trade off your data for, free stuff, for engagement, for whatever that is. But like, that's your choice. It's not kind of a default way and that you're falling into. So that's a very big mission, big vision. We changed a little bit the wording on, like we called it Open Web back in 2019. But it's the same idea. I mean, Open Web was like a little bit confusing for other people, because like, hey, isn't the web already open? And you're like, well, actually, no, it's kind of becoming more and more closed. But, instead of having that argument, user-owned is a lot more crisp what it means. So that's kind of the vision. And so from that, there's a lot of pieces that need to come together to really fulfill this vision. But we can kind of go through this. Through the questions.
Yeah, on that assets, data, and power of choice, that resonates so much with me. We here in Canada where I live, we just had Thanksgiving and chatting with like relatives. The thing that kept coming up that we were talking about is this, like, we feel that we have no agency now in this like tech world because the algorithms have gotten so good. They know us so well. It almost feels like we're prisoners and everything's predatory. And we were talking about how we almost feel like slaves to our devices and how hard it is just to, get the willpower to break that. As silly as it seems, like we're adults, we can think for ourselves, we can make decisions. But a lot of people, I think, feel trapped in this technological, doom loop that we're in, it seems. I want to take a bit of a step back and just kind of ask you as like a builder of an L1, like, what does success look like for you? I feel like, as an outsider who's not building this stuff, but it seems just like rampant competition for users' attention between L2s, L1s, you name it, even apps now competing for all of the attention themselves. So from your perspective at NEAR, like, how will you know when you've achieved success and what does that actually look like?
Yeah, that's a very kind of important question. And so the kind of in the vision, right, we have this all people part. And so kind of that is a primary metric for sure, like how many people we actually have on the platform. Back in 2021, I kind of outlined that we should get to 1 billion people in the next 5 years. We're at about 23 million monthly active users. So, we made progress, still some room to go, a couple more years. But I think the important part has been, and this is actually something that we've been adjusting. I think we've kind of over-focused on users, and we kind of came short on the building the economy under it. And so kind of within that, again, idea of new internet, you want to create a new economy. And I think that's actually where the competition is, for the most part, in Web3, is kind of how to create this new economy. But the way I would measure this is kind of think of it as GMV. Like, what is the gross kind of market value, is being transacted, not just volume of tokens, but actually how much value is being moved by people every day. And so as we actually start to bring value from the transaction that happen right now through Google and Instagram and TikTok, the transaction that happens through Amazon and DoorDash, is through all of those aggregators into this, where people are kind of owning more of those transactions and services are more direct. I think that's when we're going to see really, true adoption happening. So those are kind of two. I actually tweeted that a couple of days ago. The North Star is, all people and kind of all the kind of market value moving to new internet.
Illia, I want to get into a bit of the, technical aspects of NEAR, maybe at a high level to start, and maybe we can kind of dive into the technical architecture with with this concept of user-owned internet at the forefront. But maybe to start, can you just give us a bit of how NEAR is differentiated from other L1s, L2s? I know, it looks like seeing Nightshade V2 launch, you're actually executing the original Ethereum sharding roadmap. So, maybe just give us kind of the high level on NEAR's architecture.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, kind of user-owned internet, we want to bring, billions of people, and we want all of the economy to move to this, which means the requirement kind of has ease of use, but also, massive scale, ability to continue grow the capacity of the network overall to sustain that. And so the only way to do that, realistically, the only way to do that is to have a sharded network. Now, the way you can do sharding, there are different approaches, right? So, and Ethereum currently took this approach of, partitioning the network into sub-networks of, L2s. You have, kind of similar approach with Avalanche, Polkadot. Cosmos is even more on that. But I just want to mention, not partitioning a network in any way, right? So, just, hey, we're going to have a bigger machine processing all transactions, doesn't work, right? It doesn't scale beyond some limit. Now, what we believe is that the kind of few things. One is, again, from a user-owned internet, you want to have user account as kind of primary citizen, right? My account should, be on the network and able to transact with everything that's happening on the network. And that's a very important concept that gets lost in this multi-network layer 2s, etc., right? Because now I have an account on Optimism, on Arbitrum, on all of those chains, and it's super partitioned, super hard to navigate, etc. So what NEAR offers is, your accounts, kind of, it's one account across the whole network, but we are partitioning the network itself in such a way that is hidden from developers and users. And so that's what we call sharding. Sharding is this ability to grow the capacity of the network, how many transactions it can process, how many accounts and contracts it can store, but it's not visible to the users and developers. Like if you go to our Explorer, if you, use a wallet or use applications, you will actually not find the sharding kind of layout because it's, completely hidden. You actually need to hit the RPC and look at the data structures of the block to find it out. And so that's what kind of conceptually what we're trying to do. Again, similar how, you go to Gmail or you go to Netflix, and it's not telling you hey, you should go to this data center because, this data center is busy or this is closer to you. It's not the thing that you go. You have an account, you watch the movie, all the things load balancing, etc., happening under the hood. So that's kind of what we're going after. For user on internet, you need very easy experience and you need ability to scale capacity. Now, if we go one level more technical, the challenge of this approach, right, and why there hasn't been really implementations of this so far is that maintaining security as you shard the network gets complicated, right? Because kind of traditionally Ethereum, Bitcoin, Solana, they have one computer, pretty much they have every node in a network validating the whole chain, right? And so kind of the more nodes, the more stake you have, everybody validated everything, it's great. And so as you kind of starting to grow beyond that, right, you cannot process anymore on one computer. How does different nodes trust the other subset of nodes that they validated correctly? And that's a really hard part. Now, the benefit is obviously the kind of a bunch of research went into it. And I will not actually say we learned a lot from Polkadot. We learned a lot from Vitalik and kind of researchers in Ethereum. We actually have our own whiteboard series kind of video podcast where we interview different technical leaders from other blockchains. And so what we've done, we kind of combine a lot of those pieces together to really solve this problem. And indeed, it kind of spiritually very similar to what original ETH2 design was. It's a sharded blockchain. It has kind of data availability kind of with irradiated coding embedded into the consensus. It's able to, do kind of cross-shard messaging within next block. It's 1 second blocks, next second finality. And so it's a very kind of highly optimized for scale, for kind of low latency, and really bringing this user experience to users of a singular network.
And then one thing I would love to kind of get your perspective for how this architecture empowers dApps within your ecosystem. And I'll even bring up one thing that I thought was really cool with Nightshade v2. There's been other attempts at how to do this scaling. You can look at Avalanche subnet architecture where, a dApp will build in kind of their own environment on this L1 subnet chain. You can look at how Solana will do these isolated fee markets. If an app is generating a lot of activity, it'll kind of get its own little area of Solana. My understanding is that in this architecture, if I guess NEAR is picking up a lot of app usage for a certain protocol, it can almost be dynamically sharded into its own environment for that period of time while there's high usage. And then if usage goes down, it can then kind of almost unshard itself and kind of come back into the fold of the main chain. Does that generally make sense?
Yeah. So one good mental model is that every account and contract is effectively lives on its own chain. They're just getting grouped together physically to for optimal performance, to reduce the load on the network overall. And so if some smart contract is getting a lot of usage, it can get more effectively capacity by getting either pulled into its own physical shard, right? So it's as if it got its own blockchain, its own chain pretty much for itself, right? And then when its utilization goes down, it can indeed join back kind of the shared resource. And so again, this is very similar how Amazon Web Services work. The reason why Netflix runs on AWS is because of this. If they have a huge spike of usage, Amazon just provisions more computers for them. And then when it like drops, it kind of shrinks the usage. So that's kind of what NEAR does under the hood. And then again, like the whole point was like to isolate that. Like it's imagine if like the new rollups were spinning up when there's like a lot of usage and then like spinning them down when they're not needed. Like this would completely break everybody's mind if this happens in Ethereum. But like if you hide that from the users and developers and kind of do this. Now, the important part, this is kind of the only place where you actually have a long-term, pretty much guarantees that your applications as they grow are not going to become like kind of pretty much outdated and you will need to move to your own chain, right? Because you actually can get your own chain if you need that capacity. So we had Aurora for a while using a lot of capacity, and so it got its own shard for a while. We had Here Wallet growing to like over 20 million users, right? And so for a while, they're also kind of having their own kind of shard of capacity. Now, even more important, what we're working on is so-called sharded smart contracts. So what this would allow to do actually for an application to store data on the user side. And so again, similar how like if you think of, Gmail or Facebook, actually it's the way data is stored. It's partitioned by the user. And so because of this, like the more users you have, you can shard more and you don't need to move any data around. And so kind of similar idea here will actually be storing a lot more data on the user side. And as more shards are growing, it's just like you're kind of distributing the users between different shards. And so the application actually lives on all shards at the same time. And that is actually the true long-term kind of way of building applications that actually go beyond 100 million users. So again, NEAR is probably like, maybe Solana right now is like seeing that as well. But we actually have applications that have, 20, 30, 40 million users on chain. So Hot has 20, Cosmos is hitting like almost 40 now. Sweat have been like 30 or 40 million, right? And so it's actually, even a single chain cannot handle that anymore. Like that's starting to actually hit like the limits of a single shard of NEAR. And same, it will be, hitting single chain limits on Solana or any of the layer 2s. And so you do need to actually shard the application itself. So that's actually what, NEAR is really providing, is this infrastructure that's like, the good analogy is, all those layer 2s are like a single server, right? Solana is like a beefier server, and NEAR is AWS. It's a cloud that actually can guarantee you that, there will always be capacity.
Hey everyone, before we get back to the show, excited to tell you about a new omni-chain Bitcoin solution called FBTC, which has already surpassed $125 million in TVL and become the fastest growing BTCFi asset this summer. The FBTC Points Campaign Sparkle offers sustainable yields plus points and token airdrops from strategic partners such as Babylon, Mantle's new token Cook, and more. To learn more, visit fbtc.com/ongoing-campaign. And special thanks to FBTC for sponsoring us at the Edge Podcast. Illia, for those of us that have been like longtime users of DeFi or Web3 applications, will this be noticeable? Like all of the innovations you're putting together through NEAR, like I guess like would the user experience change at all for us, or is it just tech working better under the hood, better user experience overall, maybe like faster, more reliable ability to transact? But yeah, anyways, if you could summarize that for the millions of folks that are already here.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the goal is to make it just like faster and way cheaper and easier to use, right? You should not, as a user, you will not know this like is happening. You will not even know if like network, like we had actually, we had 2 reshardings in April because we had like massive growth, Hot was growing, Cosmos was growing. And so no users knew about this, right? And unless you went and like read, like validators tweeting or some our technical team tweeting, you wouldn't know this is happening. It just like network kept like expanding its capacity. The validator nodes were getting reassigned to different shards, and now it was like stateless validation to see like even faster and kind of more dynamic. And so like this was just happening kind of under the hood. And so that's, again, this is the goal. The goal is like you just use the applications and you know that it's going to continue being cheap. Like I was just saying this as well, is like Ethereum is kind of like, it's a luxury block space, right? Like you're paying premium for accessing the luxury block space. What we're going for is, this should be accessible to everyone. It should be available at all times. There should be excessive capacity at all times. Like there should be, unless there's like massive spikes, but like ideally we should never have a situation where there is actually like congestion across the whole network, right? Like maybe one application can obviously have like, some prioritization, etc. But over the whole network, like we should be able to expand capacity and always have extra. So again, it's very similar how like nobody hears from like Amazon or Netflix like, hey, we're too loaded right now, like come later. It's like, no, it's just like you make sure you have capacity for everyone to watch.
Illia, kind of in the ethos of this user-owned internet, it would appear that NEAR, the protocol, is going through a bit of like a shift into a more like governance DAO model. I think it was back in like July, I saw like a gauntlet proposal go up on a forum about the idea of this transition. So I haven't stayed up to date on it too much, but I mean, what can you tell us about what appears to be this, I guess, transition from a foundation model into more of like a DAO model?
Yeah, so I'll just give some background. We've been experimenting with governance kind of in the ecosystem for a bit now. I've given a talk of this idea of NEAR Digital Collective in 2022. We've had some experiments before that as well. We've had kind of a version of NEAR Digital Collective as like democratic elections. And so Gauntlet is kind of proposing a structure indeed to kind of reinforce this user ownership mentality and really emphasize long-term kind of stakers in the ecosystem and give them ability to control kind of what things that get funded, what are the initiatives that are getting prioritized, and so it's a model that has been effective in some of the other ecosystems, kind of with some of our own twists and kind of learnings, and it's really indeed toward this kind of vision that, hey, like we want everyone who is actually using this platform to be an owner, and they should be able to participate. If they want to, they can be active participant, or they can kind of delegate to participants who are, engaging if they don't want to be themselves. And importantly, and we'll talk more about AI, but this is also a really good environment to experiment with some of the AI concepts. I gave this talk about this idea of AI kind of CEO, AI president. And so one of the fundamental things about any ecosystem and community, you still need leaders. You still need kind of somebody who drives the vision, who coordinates people. Now, the challenge is it's really hard to do that as a person. As a person, you're flawed. You have your own, interests, and like there's this principal agent problem. And, you clearly cannot be decentralized. And so actually as AI, like if you can imagine there's an AI CEO that actually, running the ecosystem, and everybody who is, token holder are able to provide training data, feedback, provide, ideas, and then get kind of immediate answer and feedback and answer questions and coordination from this AI CEO. Now you have actually a very interesting, fully decentralized, kind of autonomous machine, literally, decentralized autonomous organization. And so the kind of, that's a vision, like I've again outlined it last year. And so this House of Stake is our kind of platform to start testing this. So we're going to start with actually an AI delegate. It's not going to be a full like president, but AI delegate now, you can delegate some stake to that, and that AI delegate will participate on your behalf in all of the discussions and decision-making and proposals. And so we can actually see if people starting to delegate more to the AI delegate versus other people, because they trust more, they know how it works, they can inspect the code that actually runs it. And so a lot of it is, again, I believe in continuous learning, continuous growth, and kind of like pragmatism over perfection. Like, we definitely cannot design a perfect system without actually like battle testing it. And so with Gauntlet, this is like a very active collaboration to really start rolling out kind of V1, V2, V3 of this to start testing these different concepts. So I think they're going to be talking more at Redacted in November, kind of on the update. I mean, the kind of build out of V1 has been ongoing. There's some more ideas of what we can do for the next gen, like kind of a version as well. And I'm excited to see kind of a lot of this experiments starting in the ecosystem, and kind of seeing as well people who are more engaged and kind of taking ownership over this network.
That is a wild concept. Like my brain like exploded as you were walking through that. So I'm just making sure I'm understanding this. Like, NEAR is starting with a delegate, but like what you're suggesting, what you've talked about previously is like basically having a CEO that is AI, but then like the thing here that we need in order to have that vision, realized, and for it to, I think, like work in our best interest is the user-owned AI. I guess maybe you can define that. Like, what do you mean by user-owned AI?
Yeah, so within the concept of user on internet, right, the blockchain serves as I call kind of a backend, right? It provides you the identity, the ownership. It provides basis for commerce, for marketplaces. But it's a backend. It's not like, you don't expect people to like engage with this unless you're kind of, market participant, unless you are kind of down in the trenches, right? In a way, like, everybody who's using blockchain right now are kind of, we call ourselves degens for a reason, right? It's early adopter type, like it's as if you were like sitting on a Swift and, sending money manually, not using like a bank, bank interface. And so what is the interface of user on AI? So I want you actually to imagine we have user on AI. And so now, user on internet. And so now, instead of kind of applications being shipped by these large corporations, right? And even potentially the whole operating system is like that. You have an AI assistant that is on your side, right? This is now AI that knows everything about you. And instead of trying to make money off you, it's actually on your side and pretty much mediating your relationships with other participants on the internet, right? You're trying to order food, it'll find the best, provider of food that you like. You're trying to, participate in some contest, it'll find and, prepare everything beforehand. You're trying to make content, well, it'll prepare everything before and, provide you exactly the context, like without adding details that you already know, but, adding the interesting things that you want to know, right? It's on your side. And so what is that thing? Well, that's kind of where this idea of user-owned AI comes in. Like, it needs to be built in such a way that it's on the individual user side. So kind of conceptually, when AI models are trained, right, there is such a thing called loss function. It's kind of how you optimize the model. Now, historically right now, if we think of not the LLMs, but like Google and Instagram, like there's an AI model being trained to like optimize, and it's optimized for making more money for these companies, right? It's not optimized for your success. The LLMs right now, like they trained for predict next token, and then later they've been fine-tuned, and right now it's not like as kind of business optimized, but we can imagine this is going to continue happening, like because it's a natural cycle. You launch a model, you make some, you start making money, then the next model you launch, you will try to make more money, right? Like that's kind of what market requires from you. So we need the reverse of this, not the corporate profit AI, but a user-owned AI, AI that is optimized for your individual success, for your long-term, economic success, well-being, learning, mental health. And so that model belongs to you. it is on your side. In turn, you can trust it with your data, because you will never trust like all of these companies with all of your information, right? You cannot. But if it's a model that runs on your device, it will never leak this data out. It will be kind of contained to you. Then you can trust it with all your information. Now it's able to make decisions on your behalf. It's able to negotiate with other parties, and it's able to be this mediator. So you don't need these aggregators anymore. You don't need Google anymore that actually right now mediates these relationships for you, because you have now AI on your side. And so that's kind of like, in a way, if blockchain is a backend, AI is your front end, right? It is how you're going to be interacting with user on the internet now. And so there's a lot of pieces that needs to, to make this work. There's like a whole technology stack there that we've been building out, but that's kind of conceptually the idea.
I think like that clicks so much for me, what you said about blockchain is backend. Yes, like we know that we interact with it, but it should always be under the hood. And these AI agents are the front end. They're going to be the B2C, B2B kind of intermediaries doing work on our behalf. That totally clicks with me. And I just don't see another future where that isn't the case, to be honest, like how fast we're going. So many questions I want to ask you about this, but I know we only have so much time. One that came to mind is, I'm assuming all of this has to probably work on some form of open, decentralized models, I would imagine. And then actually another one that just I've been thinking about too is like your co-founder, Alex. I know he's always been really into AI as well. I've kind of lost touch of what he's up to, but just curious if he's contributing to the AI side for NEAR protocol right now still, or kind of like what his involvement is in some of this stuff.
Yeah, so just to kind of on the Alex side, yeah, so he's drove a lot of the original consensus development and sharding development, and then he actually got interested in AI like in like end of 21, beginning of 22. He did a stint at OpenAI, and then he started pretty much in 23 a foundational model building company, right? So he's been actually like doing this ahead of kind of the NEAR ecosystem catching up with him. And so kind of in like this year, as we were kind of, adding AI now to the NEAR, stack, right? So kind of him and his team come back, and now they are the NEAR AI team. And so NEAR.ai is a combination of research and product to enable this user-owned AI. And not in a way where like, they build everything, but more about how do we connect to all of the different parties in the open source and kind of Web3 AI ecosystem, and really provide this coherent experience for everybody to use. And so we're going to be announcing some cool stuff at REDACTED, kind of really connecting all of those pieces together.
You can just tell us right now if you want.
You'll need to come to REDACTED. I'll give you an interview there if you guys come. So
say hello to Puffer Unify. Puffer Finance is expanding beyond native liquid restaking with new products such as Unify-based rollup and Unify pre-confirmations AVS. Unify is not just another L2. Unify is a based rollup, one that will solve L2 issues, such as slow withdrawals versus instant withdrawals with Puffer Unify. Puffer Unify is fast, capable of sub-second transactions. Unify also has boosted Puffer points, which means if you bridge assets, you earn boosted Puffer points and rewards from dApps on Unify. Puffer's core products mean a bright future for Ethereum. Puffer Unify will launch in November 2024. Learn more at puffer.fi. I know tokens are important to, folks that are, participating in a protocol that like want to see a sustainable future. So with all of the developments here with NEAR, especially on the AI side, any light you can shed on like, is there any sort of like value accrual to consider with all of these AI efforts for NEAR? I guess like what model can you paint for us? Like if NEAR is successful in all of these efforts, like I guess how does that come back to the token, the NEAR token?
Yeah, I'll paint you a very simple picture, right? So we're building this new internet, right? User-owned internet. And what we're replacing is all of the advertising, all of the marketing, and all of the payment processing that right now happens on traditional internet. So the market cap and the value that those things are generating is moving into this new ecosystem of NEAR and kind of applications and AI agents that are going to be kind of working around it. So, you can look up their revenue and their market caps and kind of project it.
Illia, with Redacted, I believe it used to be NEARCon, right? Like, have you changed the name now to Redacted, or what is Redacted now?
Yeah, so Redacted was this idea that and we didn't talk much about like chain abstraction as a concept and how it fits into this user-owned internet, but it's also an important component for a couple of reasons. But for us, Redacted was this kind of play on self-sovereignty, right? So like this user-owned internet is about self-sovereignty. It's about, being in control. And so what we wanted is to kind of create a more neutral space where not just NEAR, but other blockchains, right? We have a bunch of Cosmos chains, we have Ethereum folks, we have we have Snowden coming as well to talk about self-sovereignty, right? Like create this like more neutral platform to talk about the importance of these concepts and how all of these things come together for this new internet that we're all building together, right? Again, chain abstraction, like we can discuss technical side, but more on the principle side is also, again, blockchain is a backend, right? Chain abstraction is about like making that all kind of interconnected, easy to access for the users. Again, AI will be an interface to the chain abstracted kind of backend, but it also means that, we all kind of working together now between all chains. So we're not really competing I felt very zero sum actually, like back in like 2022, where it felt like we were like, competing for the same projects. There was like, maybe 100 different projects and they were going between different foundations, asking for grants, and, everybody would bid over each other to try to steal them. And then like, people would compete for liquidity. So all of that felt like very counter what I believe in and kind of how I approach. And like, I'm friends actually with founders of most blockchains. And so it's really weird, like, we're friends here, but then like our foundations compete, like they just didn't compete with me. And so for me, chain abstraction was really like, honestly, just removed my anxiety of this like zero sumness. And instead is like, hey, actually, if we focus on the user, if we focus on the experience we want to bring to people, well, it doesn't actually matter then, if somebody launched a smart contract on Solana and, issued an asset on Avalanche, if we can interconnect all that and make it easy to access, then like we are all, succeeding in actually bringing this experience to the world. And that's actually what we've been building, right? We're building some technologies around chain signatures and, how to pay gas relayers. And importantly, how do you actually interconnect and transact between different chains in a fast way? And that protocol itself is actually the same way you're going to transact between AI agents and service providers and products. And so we're kind of building the system that really connects everything, not just Web3 now, but also like, physical world as well. And we're kind of building that as one protocol. But conceptually, it also means that, hey, it's not just about NEAR, it's about this kind of user-owned internet. And so again, Redacted was kind of a play on this, and your identity was redacted. It's kind of privacy related, it's self-sovereignty. So that's what Redacted is.
For what it's worth, it's very evident from the outside how you've leaned into this like positive sum approach. It was something that I noticed, as we learned more and more about just how NEAR is leaning into chain abstraction. It was like, whoa, once upon a time, to your point, you had all the foundations sort of bidding for DeFi summer type incentives. And, prior to that, it was more about the promise of like which L1 can be better than the others. Now we've seen a universe of many different like cities or islands, like each one has its own like users and culture and all of that. And it's cool. The multi-chain sort of prophecy, I think, has already somewhat played out. And so since we're there, now we need to be able to create a more cohesive user experience. And I feel like you and the team are just very, very focused on that. And to your point, it allows you to escape competition and work together. One final question for you, like given that user-owned internet vision, do you have any thoughts on just regulation, regardless of where you live in the world? Like any wish list you have for regulators to support this vision? And I think one option is they just stay out of our way and like let builders build. And I do believe like the best, most permissionless, decentralized technologies will win, but they're definitely not going to do that. They're going to get in the way and try to pretend like blockchains have borders like countries. So anyways, any hopes that you have for regulators as it relates to the user-owned internet?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I think the reality is the kind of the understanding level of regulators is sadly not there to provide a guidance that is needed, right? And ideally, we have the product developers and builders actually build the kind of self-regulated framework, right? So the example is like airline industry. FAA did not write the guidelines. The airlines wrote guidelines. FAA just enforces them. And so we kind of need something like this. The problem is, obviously, this is all decentralized, and so nobody's like actually, there's not enough like kind of coming together to do that. But one thing we're thinking as we're kind of building this like new user-owned internet, like in its commerce layer, right? Again, like chain abstraction is part of that. Like how do you transact between chains, but also how do you transact with like Web 2? How do you go from $1 to crypto? How do you go from $1 to food, right? What if you like all of those pieces? They actually require a lot of kind of compliance thinking and kind of understanding these pieces. There's like an identity layer. There's a dispute resolution, right? Like what if, your off-ramp provider didn't deliver the money? Like how are you going to dispute that? So all of that is part of the thinking and part of the effectively protocol. And so the way I think of this, actually, the regulation should be a protocol. They should come in and design a protocol that is, enforces the set of rules that they want to enforce, which are, protecting investors and, preventing criminal activity. And so if they came with a protocol that like, here's the requirements that everybody should follow, and it is a technical protocol that everybody can kind of implement, I think we would see like a massive kind of improvement. And I've suggested like on some other podcasts some ideas around that. For example, you can have a protocol for registering assets on chain. Like asset information can be registered on chain. You can have a lot of this kind of additional metadata listed there. And then now your wallets, your exchanges, everyone can just pull it. Like instead of, if you issue an asset and then you're filling out the form for an exchange and wallets trying to guess what the hell this is, like all of that can be on chain standardized. Now, boom, everybody have it. You can have standardized reporting. You can have Messari. You can have everybody kind of produce that. And so now as a regulator, you can get this standardized reporting real time, produced out of the on-chain information. That's kind of thinking we need to get to. I just don't know who is technical enough to work with regulators to actually get it to that shape. But that's kind of how I'm thinking. It's how products we build, I want to get there.
I know who, AI CEO. Once you have that all figured out, Illia, AI CEO, AI Prime Minister, AI President, AI SEC Chairman, it really is the future. That's why I'm so excited about that takeaway from our conversation today. That is just mind blowing. That's such a sci-fi aspect.
AI SEC Chairman, yes, we'll do that.
AI SEC Chairman, yeah. Well, hey, this is probably a good place for us to start to wrap up, guys. So they should learn more about NEAR by going to NEAR.org. They should follow NEAR Protocol on Twitter or X. Follow Illia's account. It's IL Black Dragon. And we'll put that all into our show notes so you can easily find that. And then, Illia, just what a pleasure it was to get to talk with you. I feel like, this aspect of the AI CEO really caught me off guard. I was excited just to talk about all of the other tech at NEAR, but wow, that is an exciting development. So do you have any final word for us, or any bit of alpha to look forward to, maybe with Redacted?
I mean, there's a bunch of announcements, but kind of, as I mentioned, like the theme is like all these concepts coming together, right? Like how, I'm sure some of the listeners may have heard of Intense. You have chain abstraction, you have AI, you have, all these multi-chain things. But how all of this will come together, like that's, like at the end, we need like a cohesive experience. So that's kind of what we want to present. And I mean, it's not a finished product, right? It's going to be a call to community to participate and engage with it and build in it. So that's really, what's waiting for you in Redacted. So everybody should join in Bangkok, November 9 to 11.
Thanks everyone for tuning in. If you're a talented founder or developer, please consider reaching out to our team at fourthrevolution.capital. And to stay up to date with future episodes, plus get expert tips, strategies, and exclusive content, subscribe to our free newsletter at the-edge.xyz.